Is there coffee? Is it good?
Of course. I don't know because I don't drink
But
it.
this is, they have gun barrel coffee.
Oh, they don't let me bring that down.
Oh, we have to come up. don't have any socks. Where's the socks? In the sock drawer. There's nothing to eat in the fridge. You were having anxiety surges because you weren't here.
Hey, thank you for your comments yesterday. I had a horrible evening last night.
You feel like you live here?
I need people in my life to say, hey, should you be eating that? Because I should not have been. And I was stress eating,
sorry.
but you saw the numbers.
Yeah,
And it's not a good number.
sorry.
No, well, but I'm telling you, I appreciate you. It's almost as if you care.
Well, we'll dispel with that right away, if you don't mind.
Super duper, sorry. We're 1 minute over. We do a conversation in parking. Come on.
The future awaits, Mr. Surges.
Then the light's on right now.
Good morning, everybody. Being 9:02 on Wednesday, May 12th, we call the Human Services Committee to order. We have a couple of heavier items at the tail end of the agenda today that I would like to make sure we leave enough time to get to. So I'm going to try and move reports along at a rapid rate this morning. Right now, who do we have with it? Would you like to call attendance? There we go.
Allen,
Allen, present.
Bates, Devist, Igbo,
Hello, can anybody hear me?
is this Miss Bates?
Hello?
Miss Bates?
I'm not getting any sound.
Okay, that's Miss Bates.
Mavis, can you hear us?
No sound.
Mavis.
Mavis, can
I'll
you hear
phone
us?
in.
Lewis?
Bates is here.
Lewis here.
Thank you. Shepro?
Shepro here.
And Surges. So you have five.
Just
And
to make sure, let's just do this one more really quick.
Yeah, because the audio wasn't on the whole time or something.
Mr. Davist, is that you?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank
that was
you.
Me. I was like, yep, I'm here.
Dr. Igbo?
Deb, I see your icon, but we didn't hear you. Are you there?
Oh, sure. I am here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Perfect.
Great, thanks.
So we're just missing Mo. Mo, are you on? Okay, we have enough for quorum. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 14th
Welcome to
meeting?
Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Allen moves.
Kenyon moves, Allen second. Is there any discussion? Let's roll call that, please.
Your participant
Allen?
ID followed
Allen, aye.
Bates? Davist?
Davis, yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Miss Bates? They're approved. You have
I will bet she's trying to reattach, so. But when, motion passes, thank you. Any public comments online or in person? Seeing none? Monthly financial reports are on file. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding the financials?
Mr. Chairman, Bates here. I had to dial in. I don't know why.
Say that again, Mavis?
I had to dial in on my phone to hear anybody, but I am here.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Jake, why don't we go to the Veterans Assistance Commission?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I know you want to keep things moving along this morning, so I'd be happy. It's a pretty standard report. I'd be happy to just take questions, or if you'd like me to present it, I can do that as well.
Jake, before we start, I just want to, I may have mentioned this at the last meeting, and I want to make sure that we keep this at the forefront, but the Veterans Assistance Commission had an advocate come forward asking the entire board to remove, to review the salaries and compensation for the department. We are moving through with that in the Finance Committee and putting that together, not through this committee. And I just wanted to make sure that Jake, I mean, eye contact here between you and I, and it is nice to see you in person again, sir. I just want you to be assured that that has not fallen off the plate in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's more appropriate to go through finance and bring it along that way than to do it through here. Any questions on that at all, or?
I'm not the least bit concerned about it.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Any comments for Jake on the Veterans Assistance Commission? I know you guys have been beat up a little bit, not you, but the VA is getting, a couple of lumps in the press lately regarding some of the post-corona thing. Is there anything to be concerned about there that's going to affect getting services and goods out to our people?
Not locally, with the exception of there's still a pretty big delay. It's not within the VA, but a partner federal agency, the National Personnel Records Center, that maintains records for veterans before the year about 2000. There's still a pretty big delay for those, and you'll see that in the first chart. Some of those days pending, average days to completion on the claims are still up there, and that's still a result of not having folks in that big warehouse being able to get the files and scan them to the VA. That's my biggest concern right now.
And I know there is absolutely nothing that Jake and his department can do about that. It's not like you can call the IT staff. This is literally, people are not back in that warehouse, walking down, grabbing the box off the shelf and pulling the records. And I don't have a fix for that in any way, shape, or form, but I appreciate your patience and you communicating to our veterans the problem that exists there. So,
Absolutely.
Jake, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jamie, why don't you come up to the podium and walk us through the Blue Cross Blue Shield invoices? I have not seen these yet, but I'm curious to see. There was a couple of months that we had some erroneous billing, or should I say weren't billed, and we were catching up, and how that has played out, if we've trued up on that or not.
So those have been trued up now. It's a little easier to visualize.
Jamie, hang on.
It's a little easier to visualize if you go to the group alternatives report, where you can see that January was very low. And
Blair,
then-
can you pop us under the group alternatives report there? 2 down. There you go. In here,
And then scroll down one more.
one more.
Yep, that's the one.
There we go.
So you can see where January was extremely low, and some of that had to do with that billing error. It is finally caught up. March was high. If you look at the orange band at the bottom, that's claims. So claims were up, but the reason it was so considerably high also was that they caught up that, if you look at the yellow bar, that is almost nothing in January. That one's quite large here in these next couple months. That was them catching up the billing error. That was within that yellow bar.
So for committee members, it's not like we were the healthiest people in the world in December and January. There was truly a Blue Cross billing glitch that occurred. And it's not like our people got sick in February. It just caught up.
Correct.
So it's just a true up on that.
Yes.
Perfect. So are we within tolerance on our expectations for, Blair, go back to this month's bill? On the left-hand side, go up to one more. There we go. So we're back within tolerance on this one?
Yes, we are. I mean, this one is high, but that's because we were catching up that billing error. So we should return to normal billing amounts next month. That'll
And
look pretty
our normal
standard.
billing amounts that Jamie and I see are typically 1.2, 1.4. So
Yes.
when you see a 1.6, you throw caution, say, what's going on?
Correct. That's that adjustment line that says 380, 783.
yeah.
Correct.
Perfect. All right, why don't we go on to, are there any questions on the Blue Cross Blue Shield? Let's go on to item B, the MERP information. $59 members. Are we up a couple from last month?
Yeah, I believe it's up just a few.
Okay, I think 54, 55 is kind of our number. We're at 59. Nothing to be of any concern about here, unless you feel differently.
No, nothing to be concerned about.
Perfect. Questions, comments? The group alternatives report. Again, we kind of just went through this. Jamie, is there any anomalies other than the billing that we identified?
No, there were no anomalies.
Okay. Are we going on to item, any questions on that? I'm so sorry. Why don't we go to item D, applicants and staff changes? I believe we should see a leveling off of the erratic nature that we saw during the election cycle that really skews this, and everybody goes, oh my gosh, how many people are we losing? How many people are we hiring? No, it's just election judges that really throws off the numbers. Without that, are we within tolerance? And
Yes, there's been a little movement. I think it just has to do with new elected officials and things, and there's just been some movement, some changes in positions, new positions approved, but yeah, everything looks pretty status quo.
okay, and just a reminder to everybody, one of the byproducts of this report was making sure that the recommendation went to the full board, that if we're just replacing somebody, we don't need to beat this up every time. There was an employee there that left and we hired another person to put into that spot. That doesn't require hours of debate. It's just a change. We're not creating or adding a new position. We're just making a replacement for a vacancy that occurred. And we appreciate having this each month to be able to review. Any questions or comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, Deborah?
Hi, Ms. Allen.
Hi. I don't think I can remember the last time we added a new position. This is just a routine thing that we do to make sure that everybody's following the rules of not adding. Of course, we also haven't been getting rid of positions either, I don't believe. We talk about how a way to lower the work staff is to not replace when people leave or retire. But I don't think we do that either. So it kind of balances, right?
I agree with you, Deb. It's, however, I remember when, again, I've only been here 2.5 years, but I remember when the reports came through at the board level and in finance committee that I was very confused as to what the reports were saying. Hi, we're being asked to approve this. Well, what do we have to approve? A director had a vacancy and filled it. And I'm not, maybe this is just me personally, but I didn't necessarily understand that until I began getting into this report, at which point I understood the correlation, and I just want to make sure that I'm communicating that correlation isn't a situation where anybody's being added. That was just my inability to read it properly and understand it at the time. Corinne, are you following me on that?
I am.
We would get these things saying,
I
hey,
would agree.
we're hiring somebody, and we're just like, we're not, we're just replacing a
It's just a
vacancy.
replacement. And to Deb Allen's comments, the new appointment has been the public information officer, but that position is still open. So that has been, this year was approved by the board to hire, but I have not, we're still in search.
Okay, and I wasn't going in any direction there at all, but
just to.
thank you.
Just to let you
Very
know.
kind of you.
Yeah.
Deb, is that okay?
Nor was I, Mr. Chairman. That's, we all think that's a good idea.
Perfect. Thank you. Jamie, let's go on to item E, workers' compensation report. And again, I will preface this with the board that it is, and I believe I said this at the last meeting, it is unfortunate that our committee meets the day after the full board, because we give you a graph that says, look at how good we're doing, while we actually saw behind the curtain at workers' compensation claims that are pending and may be coming down the road. And that's a really tough swing to in your mind, say, well, Cliff, how are you saying this the day after when just the day before it was all doom and gloom? Okay, it's a long process. And what you're looking at is actually what's been closed, and some of these have been open for quite some time. And what we reviewed as board members yesterday are things that may not come across our desk for another 18 months. Sorry, Jamie.
And that's true. I mean, some of the settlements discussed were for dates of injury that were for years before. So when those amounts do hit, they will hit in previous years because that is based on the date of the incident and not the date of the settlement. So when those do hit, they might hit in previous years, not necessarily in this year, even though those amounts were paid out this year. So when you look at the reports and you look at this year, current years are naturally going to be lower than past years because many of those things haven't closed and settled yet. But as we trend and we look at the number of claims and the claims that have closed, we are continuing to trend downward.
Looks like court services is our big winner this month.
Court services did have an incident that occurred in the Juvenile Justice Center that did result in a few injuries to employees that are being managed.
Is that under assault? Is that?
It's either under assault or under human. I'm not sure, probably under assault.
Okay, and if I can make a comment, which may be out of line, but there are only so many things that we can control.
Correct.
Other things are inherent. So an officer that is in pursuit, a juvenile detention individual that, having trouble with somebody, I mean, these are things that are inherent to the job, and that's why we have workers' compensation. And we want to make sure that we're doing the very best we can to be there for our employees at the time that they need us. On the other hand, the things that we can control, such as slip and falls and stuff like that, we've done everything we can. We're continue to do it, but you're going to see these blips, and that's why we're here. So, fair?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else on these? Any questions or comments from the committee? Let's go on to item 7A, monthly training report. All right, it looks like we have made huge ground on our sexual harassment training compliance. Am I reading that wrong?
No, you're correct. We have almost 900 of 1,200 employees are completed already.
Wait, and it's, what's the date?
It's May.
Is this September already? So we've done really well on that, and we can't say thank you enough to everybody. Last month, we discussed a small, I don't want to use the term glitch, but our system was designed so that if you completed something but didn't check the right box, they weren't being notified. They were continuing to be notified as if they hadn't completed that. Was there any action on that?
When that happens and the person who's receiving those lets us know, we do hand remove those notifications.
Okay.
So if they don't check the right box when they go through it, then it doesn't necessarily mark them done, but they can then send their proof into Human Resources, and then we just hand remove them from that list.
So did we have a whole bunch that we hand removed, like hundreds, or did people really take it?
No, I think there were only a couple.
That's wonderful.
It's not very many.
Spectacular. Anything else on compliance?
Nope.
Perfect. I don't have anything under old business at this time. If there's any members of the committee that have, I invite you to bring it forward right now. Going once, going twice, gone. New business. For item A, the 2022 medical insurance company choice, Mike Baker's team reached out to me from Group Alternatives and said, and asked, how aggressive do you want us to be in terms of shopping the insurance for the county? And Michelle, feel free to bop me on the head if I stray on this one. And I said, Mike, that's a great question that's far-reaching, because every time we get, it seems that every time we get near contract negotiations, the health insurance component seems to be a sticking point. And Michelle Neerman and I took conference with Jeremy Edelson, one of our union negotiators, and spoke with Jeremy and asked him point blank, give us some guidelines on this. What are our rules? Where do we want to go with this? And from my perspective, I believe it's our role at this committee to shop our insurance as diligently as possible to make sure that we have the best rates that we can going forward. Yet at the same time, we don't want to upset the apple cart to the point where the employees lose faith in what we're doing. And each time that we've come forward to say, here's one carrier versus another carrier versus a third carrier, the unions have always pushed back dynamically saying, hey, listen, there's going to be such an upheaval with this. There's going to be such a disruption in coverage. There's going to be such a, and I want to be sensitive to that. The reality is, and Jamie or if Joe Onsick is on, or somebody from finance, the reality is that due to the COVID or not, we have been able to hold our rates to our employees extremely stable, if not reduce them in some small way. We have been able, through Mike Baker's team, to increase coverages and benefits to our employees, not dramatically, but we didn't diminish them. So we are at a win-win across the boards in so many ways that it kind of doesn't make sense to upset the apple cart on this aggressively. Remember, the employees have seen such a change from the county 2 years ago being with the cooperative, IPBC, and then going solo, meaning the county engaging with the carrier directly. We then took it from a 12-month period that wasn't a 12-month policy period that was not in line with the rest of the world, if you will, open enrollment. And we stretched ours to an 18-month open contract period to better align with everything else in claims. In and of itself, those two things are asking a lot. We went to a carrier and said, can you give us prices for 18 months? And they basically said, we're not doing it. And we pushed back with every bit of muscle we had, ultimately received it. Things went well. I say we let that contract run, negotiate the union contracts. We had a couple of other items within these contracts that we've been looking at. And one of them was the notion that right now we have a 1783 split between the portion that the employee pays and the portion that the county pays. Within that split, we found that it was an aggregate 1783. And Michelle, again, bought me as needed. We had an aggregate 1783, meaning not each employee was paying a pure 1783. One group may have been paying, 80/20s, but you put them all together and it was 1783. We don't believe that was necessarily where we wanted to go into the future. We wanted it to be a pure 1783, and over the past couple of years, through Mr. Onsick's team, we have, I don't want to use the term clean that up, but tighten that up a little bit to the point where this year's rates are truly 1783. Now, all in all, I've not heard one complaint from an employee anyplace. But that does mean that there has been tweaks in the amount that people have had to pay out of their paychecks. And for us at a committee level, this is all hypothetical. But when you're an employee and you open your paycheck and say, wow, there was $1,000 last week and this week there's only $950, you notice something was different. Or, wow, I have an extra $75. What happened? Well, your health insurance rates went down. All in all, we've done a fabulous job, and we need to continue doing that because, and Jamie, help me if I'm wrong with this, but the only complaints that we heard in human services was that there was a major disruption in the pharmaceutical program that we used because IPBC used one, Blue Cross Direct used another, and those formularies weren't identical. They weren't good or bad, better or worse. They were just different. But if you were one of the employees who's, I use a Libre monitor, for example. My monitor isn't, for my diabetes, my monitor isn't pharmacy, it's durable medical. Well, when you change between formularies, that could change, and it did. Inconvenience, disruption, surely. And did we hear from people about that? Absolutely. A minimal number of people, and nobody who got the additional benefits called and said thank you. So it's just one of those things. It was just different. I believe that we can tighten that, and that's where we should be spending our energy, along with the dental program, and not being aggressive with the overarching medical insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield. But that's not my choice. It is mine to bring to you, to ask you your opinion so we can get back with Mike Baker's team. And again, rather than give opinion, we took the time to speak with our union negotiators to say, what enhances us and where would we like to go? Understanding that part of their negotiations might be, hey, we don't want it 1783 anymore. We want you guys paying for a little bit more than you used to. And we would like to be able to say, but we're doing, all we can to maintain what we have without any increase. And Michelle, am I fair in saying that so far? Okay. So with that, I would like to open it up for discussion and just say, what are we thinking? Mr. Kenyon, I'm staying at an hour. I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna move along. I'm just.
I moved right to these. So in this, is there any discussion on this whatsoever? I'm looking to give a recommendation out of this committee. And I'm not sure if I would have to bring this to finance or bring this to the board, or if I just bring it back to Mike Baker's team and say, this is the direction I believe we'd like to go.
Louis on the line.
Hi. Anita, did you want to speak?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So this is my third year with this committee, and also probably the third year that we've gone through presentations on health insurance and everything. And I think the 18-month that we just went through has been great. As you said, nobody has complained. A few people have minor tweaks, mainly on the prescription. The county has very good insurance, very good benefits and good plans. And that's one of the draws of coming to this county. And every year when we renegotiate, people get nervous that their doctors, their people, their things are going to switch. So I think it's to the benefit of our employees and stability to just go forward as we are.
And Anina, I would add that, and I thank you so much for the comment. I would add that I would like the negotiators to build in language into the union contracts that don't put us at the disadvantage if we'd like to change. I mean, as long as we're changing to like, kind, and quality coverage, we shouldn't be at the behest of the unions if we can get that less expensive someplace else. And I don't know that the language that we have gives us that maneuverability. So that's the fight I'd like to have, not the carrier fight right now. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Corinne, you're giving me that look again.
Yes, I'm just curious, and listening to this for the very first time. Pharmaceutical, obviously the cost of your prescription drugs, very critically important, whether or not it's a name brand or not. There's a big variety of opportunities for that. The dental, though, is also incredibly important, and I would advocate wherever we look for dental plans, whatever costs they are, that the most robust coverage is allowed to our employees, because if we all know that teeth are the harbinger of good health, and if you have bad gums, decay, that can affect the rest of your body. So I want to ensure that we have a robust dental program.
Agreed. And those two items would be the thrust of Mike Baker's research for us right now is the formulary for the RX and as well as the dental program. That's where we'd like him to, I mean, if we're giving direction, that's where we want you to focus. And then back to the Muchin team to say, clean up that language to give us some flexibility. Should we next year come back and say, we're going to look at this, we don't want to buck heads or feel like we're doing something wrong to our employees. So get it built in.
Thank you.
Okay. Anita, thank you so much. Anybody else? Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, you've touched on a lot of important elements there, as Chairman Pirag did also. The language that allows us to shop is critically important, and the labor management team and Laner Muchin should absolutely work on that. I guess direction to Mike Baker and team, for me is, we're the cub and you're the mama bear. You should always be looking and protecting us and be to rattling the cage of the employees every year. But the carriers out there need to know that we're looking, we're shopping, and that we're willing to change with. So, no, I don't want to change every year and have everybody, always in an uproar about what's going to happen with my coverage. But on the other side of it, where we do battle with the carriers and Mike Baker on our behalf, you have to be aggressive and you have to always be looking.
Agreed, Mark. And I think the battle to get the language built into the union contracts gives our swords, sharpens our swords, gives us some teeth, if you will.
Yes.
To then be able to go back in earnest to say, we're not bluffing this time, we're shopping. Put your best deal on the table, because right now, right now our hands sometimes get tied behind our back. So which battle do we want to fight? Both. Well, that's not necessarily real. Let's run the 18 months. Let's tighten the union, language that would allow us to go shop in earnest and then set ourselves up to succeed the next round is kind of where I'm going. But thank you.
Please.
Go ahead, Mavis.
So the question of should we be aggressive in our, search, I think that always has to be yes. But I understand you don't want to change things too much. Is that the problem? You don't want to scramble the eggs too much?
I think that from the employee's perspective, and I don't want to speak out of line here, but there is an apprehension that exists for somebody that's been with us. I mean, we search for the best and the brightest. And when we get them here, we want to make sure that we're offering them the very best that we can. So, so when it comes to their health insurance, people protect that, for their families.
Yeah.
It's not so much for them, but for their children, for their spouses. And when you have something that says, honestly, if we switch from this carrier to that carrier, your doctor
starts all over again.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
that
might
makes
not
sense.
be available, and that's going to be a disruption. And you know what? Employees don't like that.
And I like what Mark said, that whoever we are with right now, they better give us the best deal.
And they're
possible.
really, I'd really like to spend more time focusing on Blue Cross to say, this is what we need to be able to use some of our wellness information to help our staff and really sharpen the sword in that arena, rather than worrying about, well, don't worry because you're only going to be here 12 months and then we're going to shop you. No, we have an opportunity right now to really do some good. It's just a little bit different mentality than we've had in the past, but I think it sets us up better.
Okay, thanks. That sounds good.
Anyone else? Mr. Martin.
I agree with everything you've said, but I want to reiterate or emphasize the fact that anybody who has ever dealt with group health insurance over the years knows that periodically you've got to change companies.
Agreed.
And so that needs to always be in our holster of activities, because you can go to Blue Cross or Blue Shield or Aetna or anybody else, and after a while they just the rates go up. And then miraculously, if you leave them, 2 years later, they come back and, oh my gosh, the rates are less. And that's not unfair to employees. It just gives us the opportunity not only to operate economically, but to continue to provide them the best money we can in an environment where we're always looking for money here. So we just have to always have that in mind.
And I agree. We owe it to our taxpayers to do that.
Agreed, but just so we are absolutely clear, we have not only lowered the cost to the county dramatically, but we have held the line on the cost to our employees without an additional cost to the county for years. And for the past year and a half going forward.
I'm agreeing and I'm complimentary to everything that's been done. I'm just.
I love you, brother.
Saying that we can't forget.
I agree. And to reiterate, putting teeth in the contract language allows us to go at this differently. And I believe that that's where it's at. So anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, this is Deborah.
Hi, Deb.
Hi. There's an anomaly that I just want to mention. For a while in our law office, I changed insurance every year for this reason. The introductory year was always less. The second year made up for the break they gave you in the introductory year. So it's like you had to either make a decision that you were going to try and stay with a company because you believed in them and they didn't do anything terrible to skewer you, or you literally had to change every year in order to just get the best rate for 1 year, knowing that the next year they would catch up with you. So sometimes it's better sometimes to stay the course. I don't know. I don't think we have any leverage over Blue Cross Blue Shield to threaten them too much.
I am not aware of any complaint that has come to the department or to the committee against Blue Cross Blue Shield's coverage in any way, shape, or form. And I think they have been nothing but exemplary for us in this snapshot in time. So just for what it's worth. And whether keeping the rates steady and even lowering them a bit, whether that was because of the COVID or not, I don't know that it matters to us. The bottom line is the results were the same. We kept the rates where they were, for an extended period of time. That's a win to me. So.
Exactly, Mr. Chairman. And if I can continue, it's not just the union people. It's everyone in the county. Well, maybe not everyone, but lots of our employees are grateful for the continuation.
Agreed. And again, I do not want anybody in any way, shape, or form to think that this is some magic. This is sweat, blood, tears, hard work from Mike Baker's team, who makes it look so incredibly easy for us. So we appreciate Mike and all they do. Okay, with nothing else there, Kareen.
One last one.
Okay, sorry, Mark.
But I'll keep it quick because I don't want to make the farmer mad.
Kenyon's looking at you really squinting.
I know. I could feel it.
Okay.
Over the years, conversations that I've had with Carl Tannenberg, and through the labor management part of this, and something that we should try to gently introduce or reintroduce into that conversation in the negotiations is the concept of being able to address the split, the 83-17. There are many places in the world that operate on an 80-20. And I'm not suggesting that it's an easy path or that you could go straight to those numbers, but the idea that it's at least introduced as one of the tools in the box in the future was something that Carl and I used to talk about at labor management, and should be kept at least there, in the background, that it could someday be part of the negotiation, because that's a huge, dollar-wise, that's a huge deal. That was
Mark,
it. I'm done, Mike.
Totally agreed, and that conversation has already begun, just to let you know.
Oh, good.
So, okay, Kareen, again.
Excuse me.
Yes, Ms. Bates.
Quick question, I hope. Would that have to go through a union negotiation?
Oh, yeah.
80-20? Okay.
Oh, gosh, yes.
That would be cataclysmic in some ways. It's only 3%, but
It's a big deal. Yep.
okay, thanks.
Cataclysmic would probably be an understatement, but yes. And Mavis, it was so nice to see you in person yesterday. Thank you. And
Great.
Corinne,
Thanks, bud.
I do not know, John, I don't know the correct way to take this out of this committee. If we're making a recommendation like this, do we make it to the executive board or do we just go straight to Mike Baker's team? I don't know where the authorities lie. And we can come back to this. We can by all means, we're not under a gun on this. We are months ahead of this. So I'm just kind of, I'm reaching out and asking. I don't know. That's great for us to say in this committee, yay, now what? Where do we go from here? Let's go John first.
Well, this isn't, I'm not considering myself a procedural. I'm not considering myself a procedural expert, but what you're doing is trying to get to a consensus, are you not? To give Mike Baker instructions as to how to review the insurance coverage.
Correct.
I wouldn't think that would have to go any farther than this committee getting
Okay.
that. And then when you get that conclusion, then you'd make a recommendation.
Okay.
And then you can ask somebody that knows what they're talking about to whom you should make it.
Corinne?
I'm not sure if I know, but I would suggest, I would agree. If it's by consensus, do the research and then bring it up to the executive committee.
Okay.
And I think that would be the appropriate, looking at state's attorney.
Then I believe the way we've been doing this is to say, are there any nays to consensus on the discussion? Hearing none, let's move on to item B. Penny, would you like to come to the podium? And if I could just lay some groundwork for this, Penny and I had a very brief conversation down in her office. She's new to the position. She's reviewing some information and she had some questions. And I said, welcome to committee and let's just tell me where you want to go. Fair? Close enough. Close enough.
We'll go with that. We are currently conducting a Pcard audit in every aspect of Pcards, starting with the policy and moving on to transactions from the last fiscal year.
Could you tell us what Pcards are for those of us who don't use them and don't know?
Those are the purchasing cards that have been issued to some employees in the county to make purchases.
Okay. Credit cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're just in the beginning stages of it. It's got a lot of legs, so it's going to be quite a process, but there's a lot of information.
Okay.
So.
And we've not identified a problem. We're not saying there's an issue. We're just saying we have we've got a crap load of credit cards out there that everybody's doing their own thing. And can we collectively buy at a better rate if we just had a different process?
Well, I think that's a little bit of it, but we also have a new purchasing director. So John and the auditor's office have working kind of collectively to determine the process because we have an old policy in place. It's very vague, basically more about issuance of cards as opposed to how to actually properly use the cards. We've also changed over the years in the way that the county purchases products. It's more of an Amazon transition, quicker, faster, less expensive type process. So we're reviewing that type of information. Actually pulled up yesterday that 26% of our purchases are through Amazon now. So not so much of a vendor-based process, but that's just a small portion of what we're looking at. Not quite sure what we're going to find.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Penny on this? Corinne, go ahead.
Just curious, and the outcome of this research is, are we going to establish a new policy for purchasing so that
I think
materials?
let's get the data and figure out what's going on and we might make some recommendations.
Yeah, we don't know what we're going to necessarily come across. We're being new to the position, and what we're looking at is actually from going back through 2020 up until, it's going from December of 2019 to November 30th of 2020. So right before I came into office and many of us. So we're looking at the past habits and potentially looking at a new policy or us giving information for the county board and the proper departments to look at the policy. We also, in working with John, have come to the knowledge that we may be using a new bank as opposed to Fifth Third. So helping us really formulate what that looks like here in the future for the county.
I know at my office, at least, we used, the big complaint used to be, you can't use an online service to order your copy paper because when we're out of copy paper, we need it. So give me the card. Let's leave my office. Let's drive down to the office, Max. Let's buy our paper. Let's come back. Well, let's face it. There's not much that you can't order today that you don't get tomorrow. And that's just different. It doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just a different way of doing business. And I think we're just trying to address that. And we wanted to bring it to committee to just say, just everybody be aware. We're just looking at it. So, I mean, we'll see where it goes.
I think it's very important for the other departments to be aware as well, because we are looking for we may be looking for some information for clarification on previous purchases, just so that we have a really good picture of what's been going on in the county and make sure that we're set up here for the future of how the county makes purchases.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Alan, I have a question.
Hi, Deb.
Hi. Ms. Wegman, is there any, does the county have the ability to make any money by using a particular credit card vendor? I'm thinking of the commercials I see where you get money back if you make your purchases in office supplies or something like that. I'm just wondering if governments are able to make any money by choosing a particular card company.
That's a great question. Unfortunately, being that I'm the auditor, I don't have the information regarding that. It would be coming from finance or purchasing.
Okay.
Wait, we have a finance person in the room with her hand up.
Yay.
Come on up to the podium and that microphone right there.
We do
Name,
actually
please.
receive
Please.
we do receive a rebate from our current, I believe it's an annual rebate from our current Pcard purchaser. I don't know the amount off the top of my head, and I don't think it's significant, but I know there is a rebate program established with that. I think that's pretty standard for purchasing cards.
Deb, does that help you?
I'm always looking for opportunities. Thank you.
You're the best. Thanks. Mr. Kenyon.
Mr. Chairman, Surges?
Hang on one second. Mr. Kenyon.
I had a brainwave. What Menards gives you 11% back on almost everything. What happens to that rebate? I got a rebate in the mail for $132. Does that go to somebody's pocket or does it go back in the till? So somebody applies for these rebates too. I know we buy a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
in this county. There's got to be some benefits.
Yeah, we're looking, so just, again, this is just transparent conversation. We're just opening a door here and just looking behind it, so. All set. Penny, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
She didn't
Bates?
mention when the platinum cards for board members were coming.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Ms.
Please.
Bates.
I don't know what committee this should come up in, but do we have like a rule to buy local whenever possible to keep our money in our community and out of the hands of Jeff Bezos?
I'm not capable of answering that. Corrine?
That would be through purchasing.
Purchasing, okay.
Great question, though. I'd love to buy local when we can. Okay, Jamie, why don't we come up to the podium here? Corrine asked a little while back if we could begin taking a look at the, I'm sorry, making sure I'm on the right one. Is this the return to work one?
No, this is
Oh,
the
I'm
COVID
sorry,
paid
I'm
time
out
off.
of line. Okay, why don't you just take this one? This was from Joe Onzik.
This originated, yes, Joe
I'm so
Onzik
sorry.
actually originated this one. The American Rescue Plan Act was recently passed and included a provision to extend the paid time off that's similar to what was done in the Families First Act that allowed paid time off for people that missed work due to COVID, either to care for a family member for their own illness or to participate in a quarantine period. And unlike the FFCRA, which was mandatory, the ARPA provisions are optional. So we're asking the board to consider adopting those provisions. Also, unlike the FFCRA, which did not allow governmental agencies to recoup those funds through payroll tax deductions, the ARPA does allow that. So any costs that we make in extending that coverage will be recouped out of payroll taxes. So it won't cost the county any money to offer these benefits to the employees.
So to rise from the weeds on this, this was in the first go-around. It expired. Something new has come that allows us to reinstate a very similar version, and Joe has asked us to consider that to move forward.
Correct. It expired on December 31st of 2020, and this was passed effective, I believe, April 1st. So, and it's effective until September 31st. So it's just to reinstate it for that temporary period in which the tax
And has this
reimbursements are
been
available.
vetted through the state's attorney's office or attorneys?
It has.
Okay, and there were any modifications that were needed to pass that have been included?
Correct.
Super. Are there, Corrine?
I don't see the deadline on there. I see through December 31st, 2020, but I don't see when it expires up there. And thank you for sharing that.
That's just the summary. I think if you go to the actual resolution on the next page, it does include the September 30th date on there.
Very good.
Number 30th, 2021? Third
Yes.
paragraph down?
Mhm. Yes, I see it.
Second paragraph, yeah.
Okay.
There's some conversation. Hang on, are we okay?
There were a couple things that were added in the new one in addition to what was offered through the Families First through December, and that includes people offering employees paid leave to get their vaccination. So that would be included. So we would be including everything. So if you look at that exhibit, it does include everything that is included. There were some other small additions. There used to be an unpaid waiting period before being able to use the family coverage, and they've eliminated that waiting period. So it used to be a waiting period that they had to take unpaid before they could use it. That waiting period's been eliminated, and the paid time can start as soon as they need it.
Okay, and again, that is without cost to us because it's being reimbursed.
Correct. It should be reimbursed entirely by payroll tax deductions.
I have another question as we're scrolling through this quickly. Because now children are eligible, teenagers are eligible, does that include paid time off so that parents can go get their children vaccinated?
I believe it does. It includes to assist.
Can you share where that is, please?
Jamie, thank you for doing the research on this.
Individual.
And Michelle is coming to the podium to help out with this. We're trying to locate where this is.
That is an excellent question, Madam Chair. Right now, I believe, if memory serves me, the language actually indicates that it's the employee who's getting the immunization or is recovering from, some sort of period of illness resulting from an immunization. I don't believe it extends to family members, but we would have to look into that further.
Okay, I think that should be included because we have.
I don't think it's up to us to include something that's at the federal level.
This
You just wouldn't, you could always do any policy you want, it just would not be reimbursable if it's not covered under the act. So we would have
I don't know where
to,
to go with that.
So-
And please, I realize that the standard protocol is that there's a motion, there's a second, we put this under discussion. These are pretty big items. We're in committee. This is where the genesis starts. By the time this moves through, we would expect it to be hammered out along the way. We're hammering right now. So if we need to look into this, we can do this. I would ask that we have a motion and second to move this forward. And maybe by the next committee, if we can find that question out and if it needs to be added, we could add it at that time. Would that be appropriate? Okay. Mr. Kenyon, can I get a motion for this?
I would be glad to do that.
Okay, Mr.
Alan-
Davis or Ms. Bates,
Alan-
did you?
Davis, second.
Davis, second. Any discussion? That being said, I believe we're roll call.
Excuse me, before we go into roll call, if I could just suggest that when that potential policy is researched, I do believe that children from age 2 to 11 are going to be considered later on this year or early next year, depending on how long this policy is in place. So we may want to make sure that the language is open-ended, so that includes all children and not just specific ages.
And for anyone who thinks this thing is over, I have people waiting for their insurance cards at my office that didn't get them yesterday because one of our high school interns tested positive and has been asked to quarantine for at least 2 weeks and then test negative before he returns. This isn't quite done yet, folks. I mean, I know we all want to be overly excited, but wear your mask, wash your hands, be vigilant. So can we roll call, please?
Allen,
Alan, aye. Good admonition, Mr. Chairman.
Bates,
Bates, aye.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis.
Lewis, yes.
Thank you.
All right, item D, another heavy lift item where I'd spoken out of turn before. Madam Chair had looked to the committee to say, I believe that we need to put together something regarding to the return to work. I was, am I out of line again? No, we're on the return to work. Okay. I was extremely pleased yesterday to see the participants from the county board live and in our boardroom. I think that sends a unified message back to everybody, but we're trying to craft something that, Jamie, thank you so much, but you've got to be an octopus on this one. I mean, you've got things flying all over the place. This is what the CDC says. This is what the health department says. This is what the department heads say. So why don't you walk us through what we think we might be asking to move to the next level today?
So what we tried to put together was something that would provide guidelines for our department heads so that they can establish the appropriate plan that meets all the recommendations that fits their department's needs. We have such varying departments within the county, from, transportation to, the human resources department have such different needs. So what we really wanted to do was give the department heads the flexibility to make the plans that work best for their employees, but then provide them some pretty clear guidelines about what's required through the Department of Health and the CDC to make sure that we're still protecting our employees completely as well, and making sure that they're well informed of the requirements of return to work. So the resolution itself does state that the exhibit would contain the guidelines. So that would state that the county is authorizing departments to reopen in accordance with the Restore Illinois plan, and that the guidelines on the attached exhibit would be used for each department to develop their own reopening plan. So in looking at the exhibit, this information was taken directly from guidance provided by the Centers for Disease Control and the Illinois Department of Public Health. Both the state's attorney and the health department have reviewed this document. I did email out a couple edits that the health department made that was not included in time for the agenda to be published. I don't know if everybody got a copy of those. There should be a printed copy available as well. It was just 2 small edits. So if you want to, do you want to move to the exhibit that's attached? I'll kind of run through that real quick. In looking at the exhibit, the first heading provides guidance for return to work. So their plan should include a protocol for self-examining for temperature and symptoms, which is pretty standard. You come in, you get your temperature taken. We're going to continue that, and their plan should include a process for that. They also need to make sure that there's very clear procedures for employees who do have symptoms to call out so that they do not need to come into the office. And then there's clear return to work guidelines underneath. So those with COVID-19, when they may return to work after an infection, as well as the next bullet point, which includes those who had contact with someone who are quarantining. The health department did add a couple bullets at the bottom where they added that the local health department can adjust the quarantine period under certain circumstances. So that's the edit that they made to add that bullet point. The other edit they made was that negative tests do not change the guidelines unless directed by the health department. So they just wanted to make sure that they have the flexibility to make adjustments to quarantine periods as needed. So those additions are recommended in addition to what's up here. Beyond that, we want all the plans created by the departments to include social distancing of workspaces, limitations of gatherings, mask wearing, including eligible employees to return that rotates staff in but maintains the necessary capacity restrictions as recommended by the Illinois Department of Health. Also, employees have to be informed of all the necessary safety items, and there's a workplace health and safety guidelines for business employees and staff that has to be posted, and that's a poster provided by the state of Illinois. They also will have to update sick and family leave policies once the board makes a decision based on that COVID policy, the paid time off policy we just discussed. So we'll have to put that out once that's been approved. If that becomes approved, we'll have to add that.
So when this came to me, I was discussing it with Audrey, my wife, and I said, you know what? When I go to the pistol range, I'm really good. Like I'm in the upper 10% of marksman. And then I asked Jamie, am I shooting at the phase 4, the bridge phase, or the phase 5? And she kind of said, well, you're skeet shooting now, Cliff. Keep it moving. So when this conversation was had, we were in a different protocol than we're on the precipice of now. And we're doing the best we can. But what I want to suggest is I don't perceive this to be a hammer. This is not something that we are dropping as a blanket on top of the departments to say, get in line with this or else. This is very generic. This is very adaptive because while we have some departments that never left during COVID, we have some that have, are struggling to return right now. And we're trying to make sure that this has the flexibility for those departments. Am I mistaken in any way, shape, or form on that?
No, that's correct. It was written, intending for the departments to be able to make the protocol that fits their department's needs. So, some departments will have to have a much more robust protocol than others.
Madam Chair, is this what you requested or are we off base?
This is what the departments have requested from the county board. My question is, Jamie, you just mentioned that we will have to adjust this until the family leave policy has been voted upon and approved. So should this be tabled until the family leave policy resolution is?
Or maybe ask Michelle, is there some way for us to advance this and that family leave policy, however it is adopted, just becomes a part of it? How do we do that subject to?
Yes, if you would like to have us review that and incorporate provisions, we can do that and then deliver that to the next committee, like the executive committee. Or I know that there was some talk about a potential special Human Services Committee. So perhaps we could bring that back here before the next county board meeting if that happens.
It's because this other act is beyond this committee's control, I would ask, pass this, move this to the next level. This is, I don't want to say that this is time sensitive urgent, yet it kind of is. So if we could move this on, clearly understanding that if this was to go to executive next, that there may be an amendment that we recommend for that portion in executive. Would that be acceptable to everybody?
Mr. Chairman, Shepro.
Mr. Shepherd, if I have just one moment, I have one more comment to make.
And hang on one
please.
second.
The other thing is the technical aspect. Here, there are requirements for temperature. Everyone has to take their temperature going into an office. Right now, we have the availability of the deputy downstairs who takes our temperature. If that individual is going to be no longer there, let's say by the end of May, I've heard that may be happening, how is that protocol going to be enforced?
So this includes for a self-check. So there's no specific enforcement of it to screen people. So you don't have to have staff screening people. CDC guidance just indicates that you should give them a protocol to self-check, preferably in the morning before they leave, or to provide them the ability to do that before they enter the building. But there's no necessity in that protocol for them to be checked by a staff person and not let in. So, for example, I believe the health department currently uses a protocol where people self-check and then submit something electronically that says, I don't have a temperature today and I don't have any symptoms today. So they attest to that daily electronically. So it's not necessary to have someone screening people, but rather the employees have to attest that they have screened themselves.
Okay. And I have one more question, then I'll be done. Vaccinated individuals, as far as those individuals who may have been in contact with somebody who has COVID-19 but has been vaccinated, I believe from what I've heard, obviously double check with that, that time that you have got to self-quarantine is very limited compared to an individual who has not yet been vaccinated.
So current guidance indicates that someone who has been fully vaccinated, and fully vaccinated would mean they've received, if it's a 2-course vaccine, both courses of the vaccine, and at least 2 weeks have passed since the second vaccination, that those people may return to work immediately as long as they have no symptoms of the virus. And so that's included under the bullet of those who have had close contact with someone. When can they return? A fully vaccinated individual may return immediately.
Mr. Chairman, Bates after Shepro.
I'll defer.
I don't.
Wait, Corinne is not done. Hang on.
I don't see that. I'm just looking. Those who have close
If you go
contact
back
with
to the exhibit,
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
yeah, I was hoping you could go up there. So if you look at the second arrow near the top, those who had close contact with someone,
Right in the middle of the page.
down a little further with your arrow.
There you go.
And so that second arrow pointing in, it says those who had close contact with someone. That first bullet point below it, the following may return immediately, someone who has been fully vaccinated and has no symptoms of COVID-19.
All right, I still don't see it, but I'll find it after. I won't hold this up. Thank you.
Ken, did you have something, sir?
No, I'll defer.
Mavis?
We're already running behind, I think.
Okay, here's my can of worms for you. Are we going to require vaccination? And I think we should.
I don't know that that was addressed here.
We're
That's a
currently
very
not planning.
complicated legal question.
I said it was a can of worms, but it's
Hang
still.
on.
I believe on the current advice from the state's attorney, we are not planning to require vaccination.
Are we not allowed to require vaccination according to the state's attorney?
No, actually, this is Jamie Mosser. I'm on Zoom.
Ooh.
I'm Jamie.
Thank you all. So the law says that we can in certain situations. So this is a much longer conversation than what we can do right now. But upon a discussion of it, we had decided that we were not going to mandate our employees having to have the vaccine.
Why?
For a lot of reasons.
May I
And-
offer one?
Yes.
Mavis, if you don't, the cases that have been decided in similar situations, this is Shepro, by the way.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Shepard.
Is that if you're going to require it, then you have to provide an opportunity for the unvaccinated people to be assigned other work where the vaccination is not necessary. And that could be extremely complicated. You can't just say, get the shot or you're fired.
Correct. Legally, we would have to look at other accommodations, what we could provide to the employees. And that could include continuing to work from home. There's a lot of things that you have to look at through the EEOC. You have to look at things through the American Disabilities Act, see if there's civil rights issues with this. And there's a lot of case law, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that one-on-one in regards to it. And frankly, obviously, this is, while a tested drug, it has not had a long time in terms of testing. So there's a lot of possible legal implications down the road. And then frankly, it's something that makes a lot of issues for our employees if we're forcing them to do something that they're not necessarily comfortable with. So my recommendation is if you want to talk about this further, we can set up a time to do so and I can walk you through the law.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mavis, that was an excellent question, and I thank you for bringing up, and it was categorized properly as a can of worms. So, Jamie, thank you for chiming in. Ken, we appreciate your expertise as well.
Always.
With that, can we have a motion? I'm sorry, Mr. Martin?
I have a comment.
Turn your mic on.
Thank you. There's, if you read between the lines here, they talk about a telework policy to be signed by all employees who participate in telework. We in the past have had discussions that bordered on being a kerfuffle relative to people working remotely. And I think that if you talk to the department heads, in certain circumstances, remote working is in fact proven to be a plus for production and otherwise. And I just want to make certain that the verbiage in here doesn't imply that you have to physically be back in the office. For example, the reference of return to work. Well, it would be return to work in county offices or something. And I don't know if this is the place to talk about remote work. If this is.
So Jamie, is there anything in this document that is suggesting a forcible return to physical?
No, I think that was part of sending this to the departments to
Department heads.
develop their own policies. That some departments lend well to telework while others don't. It really it varies so much between the many departments that we have in the county. So we did not specify that they have to end telework. And that's why we included that if they are going to telework, it is best practice for them to have a policy in place for that telework for their employees. So if they want to continue telework, that's absolutely within their rights to do that. But we'd like them to have a policy in place for that telework, as I understand many of the departments do. But again, this guidance would encourage them to get a policy in place if they're going to continue telework.
So department by department. John, does that help you? Super. Corrine?
Jamie, who's going to approve the department's policies?
Oh, great question.
Is that something you're going to be reviewing? Is that going to come to this committee?
I think it would come back to this committee. Am I mistaken there?
Well, the departments of, elected officials, I believe, can instill their own policies if they wish, but any policies for county departments would need to come through committee.
Michelle, are you okay with that? You can just go thumbs up, that's fine.
Yes, elected officials have complete internal control over their offices.
There you go.
Dictate policy to them. With respect to the departments, you could tell the departments to do whatever it is that you want them to do. It's a process that can be developed by you. They could present it to this committee, human resources, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, Corinne, they reached out to us. We're trying to facilitate their request. So I think we're all in good with this right now.
Oh, I agree, but I think prudent policy would be to have them draft their own unique policies, make sure that it does incorporate some of these best practices, if not all the best practices here, and then customize it according to their own individual needs.
Perfect. That would be the intent.
And we need to have, I think we all need to have a copy of that so that we can take a look at it and review it.
So if you know, Jamie, for your department, I would encourage that somehow a finished draft from each department makes its way to a master file for our review. Is that?
Would you like me to include a provision, an edit to this before the next step that includes that they are required to return that finished plan?
I think
to
that
the
would be
committee?
appropriate, yes.
Okay.
Okay. With that said, Mr. Kenyon.
The phrase, let's all be on the same page, comes to my mind. So one department wants to open, one doesn't want to open. Wouldn't it be nice if we said the whole county's open for business? We're in business now. We're open for business. Not, you don't have to go to a phone and say, well, the health department's not open, transportation's not, but we can go to human services.
But you have to
So we're gonna need
differentiate.
to be all together on this eventually.
The elected officials can set
I
arguably their.
understand
Is that Mr. Shepro trying to chime in?
That's I understand that,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about the county.
Understood.
And I'm also thinking, if you want people to get a shot, you give them time off if they need it, but if they don't get the shot and they have to have a time off, it's without pay. There has to be something to,
I think that's something that the state's attorney is better to address because
Well,
it
I
does
know.
open up the same American with
That's just a
Disabilities Act
farmer. That's in
concerns.
the-
No,
That's
you
in
know
the
what? Farmers'
can.
things are important, so we appreciate that.
if you want time off with pay, you got to play the game.
I don't know how to legally instill that. So the document that we have, Deb, can I get a motion to accept this and move it forward?
Move.
Yes.
I'll move it.
Kenyon moves.
Nate
Mallon,
seconds.
second.
Sure.
Any additional discussion? So we're going to move this forward with the two recommendations that will be included in the next committee, correct?
Correct.
When you say, Shepro, question, when you say move it forward to your next meeting with review by the.
No, move it to
State's
executive.
attorney, Move it to exec.
Move it to exec.
Would you repeat the recommendations, please? That we're approving?
The edits would be one, to include a provision regarding the COVID pay, if that's approved, to allow that to be incorporated. And the other one would be to return, each department to return a finished plan to this committee for approval.
That's my understanding as well.
But we are continuing to let the different departments make their own pace and plan.
Correct.
Okay, I agree with that. Thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Allen,
Allen, aye.
Bates,
Bates, aye.
Davist,
Davis, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
passes.
Thanks, Anita. All right, Michelle, the young man that is with you this morning. Are we in the afternoon already?
Yeah, are we onto the ethics ordinance?
We are onto the ethics
For
ordinance.
the ethics ordinance, I'd like to introduce one of our newest members of the civil division, Vince Coyle. He comes to us from the criminal division after 8 years, after 10 years in their criminal division. So we're really happy and excited to have him join us. We've asked him as one of his first civil assignments to tackle and assist this committee and the county board with revising the ethics ordinance at the request of various board members. So he has put together a draft. We would expect this would be a multi-meeting type of process. So he's just going to give a very brief introduction If you have any questions, great. But otherwise, we will be accepting comments and then presenting in more in full with people's comments and accepting more comments next meeting.
Okay. And again, your name, sir?
Vincent Coyle.
Vincent, and is this your first meeting with us?
It is, yes.
Welcome aboard, my friend.
Thank you. Very excited.
Ice and fire. sir.
And you have the unenviable task of grabbing onto a topic that will probably, as Michelle mentioned, stretch multiple meetings. Everybody will want to give input on. The goal today is just to introduce this so that we can begin dialogue and focus in a direction. I've already had, handful of phone calls. What about this? What about that? So if you could just briefly put us into what we have, what we perceive the problem to be, what the solution might be, and where we're going.
Absolutely. So looking at the ethics ordinance, as you said, our intention today is just to disperse the first markup that we did. And also included with that first markup was some general notes and comments that are added so you could see kind of where we're going with this revision. And also know that when looking at this revision, part of it was looking at the prior amendments that the prior state's attorney's office has recommended as well. Going through this ethics ordinance, a few of the major or fundamental changes that you should look at when reviewing this. And this is because of new laws and statutes that have been created. So this is an amendment to keep up with those laws. One of them is in regards to gambling and cannabis ownership interest. So there is in 2019, and actually the cannabis control interest will go into effect June of this year, in which this law establishes an officer's ability to have ownership interest in those type of businesses. As you know, in Illinois, gambling and cannabis businesses are growing, and there is a law now on that the statute or the state has passed regarding an officer's ability to have ownership interest in those businesses. Also, a new addition that we made to the ethics ordinances regarding sexual harassment. Now, understanding that there is a employee handbook policy that the county does have on sexual harassment, but one of the items that we included in the ethics ordinances is there's a statute in place regarding when an elected official makes a claim or complaint of sexual harassment against another elected official. It wouldn't be proper to put that in the employee handbook because this is dealing with elected officials. As you indicated, one of the problems that the prior state's attorney's office had seen and made a recommendation for the committee to be open-minded in putting in place a ethics commission to handle all complaints, investigations, and hearings. The purpose of creating an ethics commission would to alleviate any conflict of interest that the state's attorney may have. Currently, the ethics ordinance does have that the state's attorney would be the person that would handle those investigations, but the conflict of interest that could arise from this would be that the state's attorney would have to represent the same person that they are investigating if an ethics complaint is made. So creation of an ethics commission is strongly recommended by the Attorney General's model ordinance. It would be also recommended by the State Attorney's Office to create an ethics commission because that would alleviate some of those issues. That's an issue of policy. It's not required by law, but it is included in the ethics Attorney General model. And obviously there can be flexibility as to what that, the makeup of that ethics commission. Looking just generally throughout this, I, in my notes, indicated different sections that are affected by the ethics ordinance. There's definitions that I tried to go through and mark for this committee to identify which ones are actually from the statute itself. Others are not. But other than those fundamental changes, there's really just language adjustments and cleanup for more clarity. So that's kind of the overview of what we were doing when looking at the Ethics Commission. And our intention today was just to disperse that, let this committee know, kind of just the general outlook for discussion in the future. Thank you.
Vincent, just so you're aware, when I was asked to chair this committee a few years ago, one of the first things that we tried to address was not dissimilar than this, and Mark Davist was kind enough to volunteer to take pole position on it. And I think Mark and I will both agree that this is the most thankless job in the world, trying to do this. When you open that PDF file and you try and search for a word, you're expecting it to take you to one section. And the reality is it pulls up 75 sections. And then you realize the spider web where we have laid Band-Aid over Band-Aid over Band-Aid over Band-Aid, instead of just having it in one clearly defined referenced area. Please be patient. We understand that. Rome wasn't built in a day. We will get this down where we need to have it. We're going to bump our head. We're going to get upset with the red line versions. We get it. Yeah, I mean, there's 24 of us plus Corrine. We're going to do the best that we can. You know, we appreciate your patience. And since this is your first one, yay. Mark, am I mischaracterizing this at all?
I wish that you were, but historically, we, Vincent, if you'd seen the very first one that was handed to me when I was sitting where Mr. Surgis is, it was, I think, 2.5 pages. And then Chairman McConaughey said, this is an embarrassment and we need an actual ethics ordinance. And here you go. Thank you very much. What ensued was months of meetings and trying to, get our arms around it. The result was pretty much the one that we have now. And it's from the moment we released it, it was under attack and scrutiny and lots of suggestions, but here it still is. So it's not that it doesn't need work. That's it. It clearly does, but it's never easy. In your quick review there, you already brought one question to mind for me with the formation of an ethics commission. I'm just curious how that differs substantially from when a special counsel is assigned because of conflict. Because when you form a commission, that's a whole other kind of big layer. But yes, we can have that.
And there is nothing wrong, Vincent, with ever telling us. I will get back with you on that. Sure. Okay, yes. Don't try and always answer something on the fly. While we appreciate that, there is nothing wrong with saying we'll get back with you. And just so I'm clear with this committee, sitting in the center chair on this, there is no politics involved in this ordinance. This is something that we were asked to get updated. That is politics free. We just need to, take action to make sure that what we have in writing is in line with other legislation that has come down and that we're updating it. So that is the goal here. That doesn't mean it's any easier. Sorry. So
Mr. Chairman, Shepro.
Let's let Vincent answer Mark's question, and then we'll come back to Ken, and then we'll try and wrap this up.
He can answer me later for the sake of brevity of the meeting. We can chat later about that.
Ken, let's go.
Well, for the sake of brevity of the meeting, I would just note one, Mr. Davis' description of the long saga that led to this ordinance didn't cover the subsequent long process to amend it, which took, I think, the same amount of time and ended up being rejected by the board. So there is a long history on this. As I recall, there is a detailed analysis, almost line by line, that the state's attorney's office, the previous state's attorney's office had prepared. And it just occurred to me that that document might be helpful to have in conjunction with the new proposed draft, so that you're not only seeing the changes. I haven't seen the new draft, so maybe it's covered, but it seemed to me it was helpful to be able to not only see what the proposed revision is, but why there were concerns about the existing language. So if that's available, I would urge that that be distributed.
Duly noted.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know what the process of this is going to be. Are we going to be reviewing it in this committee line by line, or is there going to be a subcommittee formed that can bring recommendations to this committee?
I don't know that we're there yet. My goal was to introduce it in discussion today, which we're doing now. I am happy to, I think that this can't be done during a normal committee session. So maybe we have a special committee meeting, which is only about this, and invite whoever would like to participate in that to come so that we can get this going. And then within the next 60 days, actually have a document that we can bring to committee, take a vote on the resolution, move it forward to executive and go from there. If that would, Michelle, you tell me if that's not acceptable. Okay. Madam Chair, that would be my suggestion, is not a subcommittee, but a special committee meeting.
Which will be happening monthly?
I think that we could probably, depending on the turnaround time from the state's attorney's office, I think once we hammered in that hour or hour and a half long session back to them, we would be able to respond to that. If that takes a week, yay, but if that's 90 days to get that information back because they have to go research other items, we could answer it there. Is there something you'd rather do, or?
I was just thinking that perhaps we could have a designated committee who would be doing this work and then presenting it to the committee. I'm just concerned, as much as I love having multiple voices, having the potential of 25 voices on this thing may make for a very lengthy, interesting discussion.
Davis, did you just volunteer? I'm sorry. Did I?
Yeah,
I heard
I'm
him
sorry, I was a little
volunteer.
quiet there. You outlined the method that was used before, basically, Cliff, which was that it really falls to this standing committee. And it took as many meetings, we had special meetings. It was calling the Human Services Committee together, for special meetings as needed. And you're absolutely right. It depended on how quickly the information we needed from the last one to be answered, came back into us. We always invited any other board member to participate. We had some participation, but for the most part, the rest of the board kind of wanted us to do what they saw as our job and come back to them with a close to finished product.
Mark, if I may, Madam Chair, if you would indulge us to have a special meeting to get our legs under us.
Absolutely.
If we believe that it's beyond our scope, let's call it an ad hoc to do it with.
Mr. Chairman, Shepro.
Yes, sir.
Mark could correct me, but I believe that at that time there was also, for the period the ethics ordinance was being considered, there was a staff member in the office of the board chairman who was almost exclusively devoted to turning out draft after draft and research on all of the issues related to that, which involved a tremendous amount of work and research.
You are correct.
Let me introduce Vincent.
I think we had Barb Garza from staff that was devoted to the effort pretty exclusively for quite some time.
Hopefully we're not, if we can set this, that I believe we have unfortunately, we have a special committee, human services, need for a special human services committee coming up. We can discuss this at that meeting on dates and times that might work with everybody. And we'll invite Vincent back. And if we could take it from, I believe that meeting would be within the next few days, next 5 days. So if that will give us more than an appropriate amount of time to respond,
To organize this.
if
Yes,
that's
very
okay
good.
with you.
Perfect.
Is that okay with the committee?
Yes.
Any
Yep.
nays?
Yes.
Perfect,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, could I have a motion to replace Vincent, thank you so very much and welcome again.
Thank you.
If we could have a motion to place the reports on file?
Bates moves.
Lewis, second.
There we go. Roll call, please.
Allen,
Alan, I.
Bates,
Bates, aye.
Kenyon,
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Reports are on file.
Okay, I see Jamie at the
Davis,
podium.
yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Mr. Davis.
That's all right.
Okay.
I love
We
reports.
did skip over the resolution regarding the harassment policy. That's number E under new business. I don't know if that was intentional or if you wanted to address that or table it.
E is the ethics ordinance that we just,
No, the amending the employee policy handbook section that's prohibiting harassment. I also passed out a red line version and emailed it.
Jamie, unfortunately, the agenda that I'm working from does not have that. There was I don't know where I grabbed that one from when I,
It's the very it's up here. I'm not sure where that printed one, a lot of versions went through,
is-
but if that,
just so everybody knows, that is not what I have in front of me, but Jamie, let's go to resolution under item 9E. I'll leave that one up to you to introduce.
Mr. Chairman, this may be a resolution that might be particularly good for a special meeting. We have received some comments from board members regarding this topic in terms of just the reporting of harassment types of complaints. We could take another look at that to see if we need to beef up some areas in that regard. After Jamie introduces it, if you think that that would be appropriate, we'd be happy to look at that so we could, suggest any additional changes for your special meeting.
You know what?
Bro thinks that's an excellent suggestion.
Yes, could we motion to table this and that we may take up in special meeting?
Bates moves.
Second.
Kenyon second. I don't think that's a roll call. Is that a roll call?
yeah.
Let's roll call it.
It is.
Roll call it.
Allen,
Alan, I.
Bates,
Bates, aye.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis.
Lewis, yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. And I do apologize. Now it kind of tells me why I've been one off the whole day. I'm working off an
You went
agenda.
over your schedule.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's not, okay.
Get to find
I don't believe we have any executive session needed at this time. Motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn, Kenyon.
Davis,
Lewis,
second.
Perfect. Second. Anyone opposed? I thank you all for the lengthy meeting. I appreciate everybody's indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Have a great
All in
day.
favor?
Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
All in favor? So sorry. No, I said,
Aye.
anyone opposed? Then nobody said
Aye.
anything. So.
Aye.